Hey guys, and welcome to the second episode of My Gaming Journal, where we examine both old and new video games in the format of a daily journal. For this episode, we take a look at Final Fantasy VII Remake and see how long it took for me to beat it. Please enjoy! Dear Journal, I started playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it was certainly one of the most surreal experiences I've had with playing a game, mostly due to the fact that I've been looking forward to playing this for a number of years. Right off the bat, you are in the heat of it. You get off a train, you are fighting soldiers, you are in the middle of the Shinra Corporation in Midgar. You are playing as Cloud, you are helping Avalanche take down Shinra. Shinra is an evil corporation that is using up natural resources and essentially killing the planet. Because Shinra has the most money, they're able to spin out their message much more efficiently than Avalanche is. To the public, Avalanche is a terrorist organization. For those that didn't know, obviously Final Fantasy VII Remake is a remake. The first hour or two is the whole game. That's not the only difference, obviously. For starters, the graphics. The graphics are absolutely amazing, especially the lighting. This is probably the best use of lighting I've ever seen in a video game. The gameplay is also pretty different. This is combat closer to Kingdom Hearts. As far as the characters go, you play as Cloud, a no-nonsense mercenary who has memory issues and is connected to the main villain of the game, Sephiroth. Sephiroth's backstory is a bit complicated and I'm not even going to try to explain. The only thing you need to know about Sephiroth is he's extremely powerful, has long silver hair, and also has a much longer sword to back him up. And then you have your companions, like Barret, the leader of Avalanche, who has a gun for a hand and basically believes in the philosophy kill one, save 1,000. And then you have the two best characters in the game, Aerith and Tifa. Aerith is a cleric, basically, while Tifa is a brawler. Both are sweet and nuanced characters and definitely have the best chemistry amongst everyone else. I was actually a bit worried about the writing for the game, considering in the original, these two characters were written to be jealous of one another. But instead, these two are essentially best friends, and maybe even more than friends if we're being honest. Then there was also Jessie, Wedge, and Biggs. But back to the plot. After you beat the first boss, you leave the Shinra Corporation, and then you start to see other areas of Midgar. And this is probably the biggest criticism I have of the game. On the one hand, these are beautiful set pieces with absolutely stunning detail, and there are plenty of NPCs. On the other hand, there is not much to do other than the story and some side quests. The game is what I would refer as deceptively linear. It looks like there's a lot to do, but there's not. But you can't really grind for the most part. The game does hold your hand quite a bit as far as where you need to go, to the point where if you want to do something else, sometimes it prevents you from doing it until you continue with the story. And you can't travel back to other areas until later in the game. I will say this, each setting definitely has a particular style that I appreciate. My personal favorite, and I'm sure it's a lot of people's favorites, is the quote-unquote dress-up scene. It feels like Yakuza. It's so ridiculous, it's so camp, it's treated well. I absolutely adore it. Though it's followed up by the Don Corneo scenes, which are a bit uncomfortable and have not aged well. Boss fights for the most part have been pretty easy. I've only died a couple of times. I just finished with Chapter 9. I'm going to start Chapter 10 on Day 5. Dear Journal, so I just run into the most frustrating part of the game, Chapter 10, the sewers. Chapter 10 starts off with a boss who is fairly easy to beat, but then you have to fight lizard soldiers throughout the sewers, and they have killed me so many times I've lost count. to the point where I wanted to throw this game across the wall. I didn't, but I sure was tempted. After Chapter 10, you then start to run into some of the most cinematic moments in the game. And I can safely say by the end of it, we're done with Act 2, now going into Act 3. But it starts to really take notice when you play as Barrett. And then I ran into a save glitch and had to do all the Barrett stuff all over again. So I wasted about 2 hours. Now going into the third act, you can now fast travel. Unfortunately, after you beat the side quests, there's not really much to do other than the summon VR battles. After you finish preparing, you enter in the final part of the game, where you go back to the Shinra Corporation and finish off the plot. You also run into Red 13, who is not playable, but he is an ally. After you finish off fighting some soldiers as well as exploring the Shinra building, you then start to enter the boss rush mode. And then you run into the biggest change of the game from the original. Not only are you fighting Sephiroth, you find out that a major character who's supposed to be dead in the original game might still be alive potentially. And then cut to credits, we're done with the game. Overall, I thought the game was great, beautiful graphics, fun gameplay, and I was pleasantly surprised on how good the writing was for the game. Particularly the pacing, given that it only covered the first couple hours of the original. Though I will say there were some hiccups, particularly the fact that you can't really do much outside the main story, and that you can't really fast travel until the very end of the game, which is why I'm going to give this a 92%. Now tune in next time where we cover one of my most anticipated games of the year, The Last of Us Part 2. See you then.